All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Kong is going to go over the changes that PAR is making to the agreement of sale for us. They're going to be effective here August 31st. Kong, you want to let us know what they're changing?
Thanks, Brooks. It's a very minor change, but there was a reason for the change. And I'm not sure if everybody saw the email from Desiree Brower. She's one of the attorneys on the PAR Forms Committee. Apparently, the email she sent kind of really explained everything, and it made sense. This was the email that she sent in case you didn't read it. I just copied and pasted here. States, based on feedback PAR received from members following the release of the forms in July, new versions of sales agreements will be updated in PAR's forms library on August 31st, tomorrow. In the forms released in July, the financing paragraphs of the sales agreements were reorganized, and with it, a contingency was permitted for lender-required repairs, even if the financing contingency was waived. PAR Standard Forms Committee received comments from members who pointed out that this wasn't fair for sellers who would be vulnerable to terminated agreements based on lender requirements, even if the contingency wasn't elected, meaning it was waived. The committee listened to the feedback and, after considering the matter, agreed in a meeting earlier this month to approve the relocation of the objectionable language. There is no new language in the forms being updated on August 31st. The Standard Forms Committee approved moving language in paragraph 8A5 into paragraph 8F5 to ensure that any lender-based contingency is only applied if the financing contingency is elected. Okay, so there was a little loophole. So going to the current contract that is in our Zip Forms library today, and only for today, it'll be changed tomorrow. Let's go to this 8A5 real quick. And if you notice, paragraph 8 is buyer financing. There's nothing about waived or elected yet, okay? Comes later on down in the paragraph. So 8A5 states that if the mortgage lender or a property and casualty insurer providing insurance required by the mortgage lenders requires repairs to the property, buyer will, upon receiving the requirements, deliver a copy of the requirements to seller, and within 5 days of receiving a copy of the requirements, seller will notify buyer whether seller will make the required repairs at seller expense. Okay, so this whole thing, if the seller is going to make the repairs or they're going to negotiate, fell above here, so that a buyer could use this to back out of the deal, even though they waived the mortgage contingency. Okay, so what they did, we'll scroll through here to the revised contract. They said they moved it to 8F5. Okay, so here's the buyer's financing in the new revised agreement of sale. So 8A5 is now gone. It only goes to 8A4. Okay. That paragraph about lender required repairs is now under F. So immediately the first thing you see under F is mortgage contingency, whether it's elected or waived. And as you scroll down, there's 5. If the mortgage lender or a property and casualty insurer providing insurance required by the mortgage company requires repairs to the property, and so forth. So now it's under the mortgage contingency, so that if you have a seller that receives a contract where the mortgage contingency is waived and they do get a mortgage, the repairs is on them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? It was really simple fix, but it was a real glaring loophole. that was mentioned a couple of times by various agents.
Okay.
Tim, any questions or any comments on that?
I said, is everybody clear on it, or would you like him to go over it one more time? Is there anybody want to speak up? What else do we have, Colin, as far as changes that had taken place?
Well, let me just, that was the only change on the agreement of sale. But I did want to go over something else, Tim, that came in a situation yesterday with one of our agents. The scenario was a contract was accepted and we represented the buyer side. And it was contingent on the sale and settlement of the buyer's property. So we have a form sent out. I'll scroll through here. Hopefully everybody can see that. Sale and settlement of other property contingency to addendum to agreement of sale. So our agent wrote in that under paragraph number 5, that after November 10th, if buyer's property is not under an agreement of sale with terms acceptable to seller, seller may terminate the agreement or written notice to buyer, and all deposit monies paid on account of purchase price will be returned to buyer according to the terms of the agreement of sale, and this agreement of sale will be void. Seller's right to terminate continues until buyer's property is under an agreement of sale with terms acceptable to seller. So it was written with a date that was pretty far extended out. I mean, November 10th is, let's just say 2.5 months away. The buyer puts their house on the market and it's not getting any showings. They're getting frustrated and they just want to terminate. So the question was, can the buyers terminate at this point? And I think Brooks, you and I, we talked to this agent about it, and we came to the conclusion that no, the buyer cannot terminate. Only the seller can terminate. But we advised our agent to go to the listing agent and just say, look, we're not getting any showings on this property. The buyer's not able to reduce the price as agreed upon for their list price. If we can amend the do a change in terms to amend this addendum and make that November 10th date something closer to, say, September 5th, another week, because your seller needs to sell the house to buy another house, and this isn't going to happen right now because we're not getting any showings. So I think the point of this is you have to read these contracts, because the buyer just can't just terminate this deal. It's up to the seller to terminate. And the way this is written, the buyer has to make a good faith effort to list their house up until that November 10th date, at which point the seller then is the one that can terminate it if they get tired of waiting around for the buyer. So Brooks, did you pretty much agreed on that yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were talking about, we just encouraged that agent to have a conversation with the listing agent saying, look, we're making a good faith effort to get the home sold. Unfortunately, they need a certain price on the sale of their home to net them a certain amount to proceed with the purchase. So they're not able to drop the price on that home. And you and I both know that, price is probably the issue at this point in this market if it hasn't sold in however many weeks it was. So, does the seller just want to release and go their separate ways at this point? Because we don't want to hold them up by any means either. So.
Right, so they can either mutually agree verbally upfront that they are going to terminate the agreement, or the last thing we want to do is try to put a termination in because we have no reason to put a termination in. And if we terminate, then the buyer is going to lose their deposit.
Right.
So if we can get them to mutually agree and maybe even get the seller to terminate and the buyer signs it, then the buyer could get their money back and everybody could move on. But I think that you're right, that that was the best move for this particular property.
Yeah. So just read all of these addendums. Sorry. Just be careful when you read these addendums, because some of them, specifically this one, does state about how long it has to be listed for and who can terminate and who can't. So.
And if you have any questions, reach out to us before you send a termination so that we can all make sure we're on the right page.
Hey, Kong, could you possibly go in more depth on that first part? I feel like I understand it, but I'm still a little confused, if you wouldn't mind.
On the
Just over
mortgage
the-
contingency,
Yeah.
the change?
Yep.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Just, if you don't mind.
Okay. So the current contract that's in our zip forms, at least for another day. You see the contract now? Okay. It starts off with 8 buyer financing. Okay, and then it has these 5 detailed descriptions of what's going on with the buyer financing. And number 5 states that if a buyer gets a mortgage and the lender or even the insurance company, it's not just mortgage, but insurance as well, states that, hey, we need a repair made. Mortgage companies, sometimes they'll say the chip paint needs repaired, handrails need to be added. An insurance company may come in and say, hey, that Zinsco box needs replaced, we can't insure it. Or they could say, you have this gray stuff plumbing, we don't insure houses with that gray stuff, that polybutylene. So as of right here, the way it's written, it's a negotiable item, okay? Even if further down this same contract, even if the buyer waived the mortgage contingency, okay, this section is above that. It's before you waive the contingency. So it pertains to any deal, okay, no matter what, no matter if the contingency was waived or elected, okay? So a lot of agents had problems with that, specifically agents that represent sellers. So after hearing all the complaints, PAR met and discussed it and decided to move that paragraph below the section after you elect or waive the mortgage contingency. So once you waive the mortgage contingency now, right here, see section F there, you either elect or waived. And if you waived, everything below it does not pertain. So now that paragraph is under 8F5. So once you waive it, okay, and your buyer still gets a mortgage and the lender says, hey, we need handrails added, then that's on a negotiable item then. Okay.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes more sense.
What, yeah. Now, if they
Okay.
waive it, it still pertains.
Got it.
Okay.
I wanted to ask everybody as well, and I talked a little bit about this with you as well, and I just want to double check with the when you're dealing with VA loans, and this is totally off subject, so I apologize. I thought I would just butt it in here, just maybe if the next call we could go over it. Determining whether the seller or the buyer pays for the termite inspection, just because of Mike Shilley brought it up to me. I just wanted to see if that's a thing, or if that was passed, or if the buyer can pay for it now, or the seller, or if that's always been that way, or
Typically, it's on the seller to pay for it.
Mhm.
But you'll have, when you get an offer in and it says VA and they have a lender name on the pre-approval, I would call them up and just say, hey, who's responsible according to your underwriters? Who's responsible for paying for the elected termite inspection?
Okay, so it could be
That's the
different.
only safe way around it
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
absolutely find out, because everybody's different. So
Right. Okay.
Even though our contracts say that the buyer's gonna pay for it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask.
If it's paid for upfront at the time of the inspection, I don't think there's a problem with it. But if they're trying to put it on the settlement sheet and move it over to the seller's side, that's where we run into the problem, because that's not what the contract says, but that's the lender's guidelines. I don't even know if it's an actual VA guideline, but it's the lender's guidelines. Because each lender is different, I think.
right.
With regards to that. So, again, are we going to follow the contract? We're not going to follow the contract. It's like we're not allowed to charge a transaction fee or broker fee to a VA buyer. Well, we can't put one on the settlement sheet because of the lender's guidelines, but we can collect it outside of closing or at the time they sign the buyer's broker's form, and they can pay RE/MAX directly, but it can't be on the sheet. So, there are some ways around some of these situations.
Okay,
Okay.
let me ask, Tim, you brought up a good point.
Yep.
Gershio brought up a good point about the whole VA and mortgage. So this revised contract, if you notice, the buyer financing at the top, and we have the 4 statements there. And then section C, now keep in mind, this is all before elected or waived, okay? Has the FHA VA box. So if you have an FHA buyer and they waived mortgage contingency and the house doesn't appraise, are they able to back out of the deal?
Yeah. Right.
Anybody else?
According to this, they can. I'm just gonna. But,
You're talking about the FHA VA amendatory clause, Tom?
Yes.
That trumps everything.
Yep. It's in its own little box by itself, right? And it's above the elected and waived portion, right? So if you have an FHA buyer, they waive mortgage contingency and the house doesn't appraise, pretty much they still have it out there. Now, what if you wrote in that, and you have an FHA buyer and they waived mortgage contingency, and on the last page, which I always advise you don't do that, you write in, buyer will buy house irregardless of appraisal value. And the house comes in and it doesn't appraise, can the buyer still back out?
I don't think
What's that, Kara?
so. I don't think so.
Okay,
But of course, I represent a lot of sellers, so
sure.
I would try to keep that escrow.
Well,
I have another question on this. Is there any reason that we should ever be checking the FHA and VA box if it's a conventional?
No.
Okay, all right.
So going back to that whole scenario, let's say you write in that the FHA buyer is willing to pay whatever, and you have an executed contract, and then the house comes in and it didn't appraise. So the first sentence in this FHA VA clause, it is expressly agreed that notwithstanding any other provisions of this contract. So right there, it says this supersedes anything written in this contract. Buyer will not be obligated to complete the purchase of this property described herein to or incur any penalty by forfeiture of earnest money deposits or otherwise unless buyer has been given in accordance with HUD, FHA, or VA requirements.
Okay, so even if you write it anywhere on the contract, still, even if it doesn't appraise, they have the ability to back out. Even if you have it in writing saying the buyer will buy the property if it doesn't appraise.
Yeah, according to this box, I mean, it says,
It doesn't mean the seller is going to release the deposit.
right, it doesn't
Might
mean they're
end
going
up
to
in
release it.
mediation, But
Yeah.
like I said earlier, that amendatory clause trumps everything.
Gotcha. Okay.
What if we crossed out that in that box and had everyone initial that line?
I
But
don't
that
think
the
you
lender
can
was
do
gonna
that,
accept it.
right?
Okay.
Because
right.
remember, a lender is going to send you one anyways to sign 2 days before settlement.
Right,
There's always two. There's one in our agreement and one that comes from the lender. So
Right.
there's always two amendatory clauses that get signed. So you can't negate it. It trumps everything.
Hey Kong, this is Sherry. I have a quick question about that box.
Yeah, Sherry.
So I always wonder, because USDA loans are also a government loan, it's not an FHA or VA, but like USDA, I guess, doesn't apply to the VA and FHA box?
My thinking on it is it does, because doesn't USDA require you to sign something similar to this too from the lender?
Yes. So I never know what to do there. I mean, I usually don't mark the box because it's not a VA or an FHA loan, but all the same terms apply because it is a
Right.
government. And it could require a termite inspection. It could require a water test. I mean, again, it's up to the lender, I guess, but I don't know. It's always something I'm not sure about.
Right. Because I think FA or USDA would fall under HUD. So really what it should say there, you notice how it says in accordance with HUD, FHA or VA requirements, but then the box up above only says FHA/VA. So it should say HUD/FHA or VA.
Right. Okay, well, just a question. Maybe someone could submit that to the forms committee.
Right.
Because every time I do it, I just always I second guess myself. Because
Sure.
it's truly not an FHA, but it is a HUD type loan.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I haven't done a USDA in years, so I'm not familiar with that program as much anymore. I know we had them in here a few years ago to do a seminar. With times changing, maybe it'd be good to do a Zoom call with USDA just to find out what their programs are about and how that works. So that would certainly be a call we could schedule and get somebody from USDA on the phone.
Tim, remember back in the day, they used to run out of money by September, October. I bet you they have a ton of money now.
Yeah, because I can't imagine that many deals have closed with the market that we're in with USDA. But like I said, with times changing, maybe it would be a good idea to revisit with them. We'll call Cumberland County USDA and find out, if we could do a Zoom call with them, let them give us their spiel on the programs.
All properties in Perry County qualify for USDA. And I actually had 2 buyers in the past 3 months that used USDA loans. Now they purchased down in below where you live, Tim. They were in Newberry.
Yeah, there's a large
down in that
large
area.
portion of York County in our area that qualifies for USDA.
And I had one in Dover as well. I mean, that was the only way these buyers could move forward. And especially with the way the market is, it was crazy, but we worked really hard and we found them and their offer was accepted. But yeah, I think with more types of financing being open now to sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should, I think we should check that out.
Figure out the
and
options
Get
and
educated
rules.
on it, yeah.
And I think in Cumberland County here, it's actually past the Sheets down the pike here, going west, you know, by Sun Motors there.
The territories are all on the website.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As to which areas and which houses are available, but regardless of whether we talk, whoever we talk to, I think it's something we should do. Let's learn about it. Because it's been a while since we had them in there, years.
Bob just sent a link here. Bob Hoover just sent a link. I'll share it with everyone then.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up, ask, question, situations that they've been involved in that maybe the group can put their minds together to figure out how you would have handled it?
I just thought I'd make a comment, Tim. I did at USDA earlier in the year down in Chambersburg, and it went well. They made a lot of repairs to the house and it closed without any issue.
Good.
Yeah.
So it was your buyer, Jim?
Actually, my seller, the buyer brought us USDA offer though.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Dad, anything you'd like to say? Gene?
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, these are very important items and we do need to stay abreast of this financing. And basically, just remember, it's got to be good for every party so that there is a little bit of negotiations that goes on when these problems occur. And if both sides get a good deal, they're going to sign over or release, whatever is the case, just like the item we were talking about today. It's good for that seller to let that buyer out of the deal because the house apparently that's contingent isn't going to sell. That being the case, you know, we got to use our common sense in every aspect of this transaction. That's all I have.
Yeah, and again, back to that same deal that we're talking about, this whole situation took place Saturday during the golf tournament. You know, yeah, initially the sellers might be like, I don't want to let them out of the deal, you know, that type of thing, but it's not going to do them any good to keep them in the deal either, because they have an out. All they have to do is wait it out till November and then they're out of the deal. So that's why I suggested that we talk and mutually agree, that kind of thing. But I just wanted to finalize and just say to everybody who was involved in the golf tournament for the company, thank you for everybody that helped, donated, participated, golfed. We had the most incredible golf tournament we've ever had in all the years that we've done it. I don't know how many, is Aaron on the call or not? I don't know how many total golfers we had, but we had 2 full flights of
I think it's 148, Tim.
yeah, 148 golfers. I think we raised about $17,000. It might hit 20 as soon as we finish selling the last 20 some tickets of the gun raffle, because we're going to make about $3,000 off of that. And so if anybody knows of anybody that wants to buy a ticket, there's only a total of 150 tickets sold. We have low 20s left in it. And as soon as we sell the last 20 some tickets, we'll pull the winner of that. And then that money will all go to the wounded veterans too, and our leak organization. So thank you to everybody. And that's all I have to say. Brooks and Kong, let's get together and see if we can get somebody from USDA to get on a call with us and come up with a good topic for next week. All right.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
ya.